Allora iniziamo.
We may begin.
Chiedo di prendere posto.
Please take a seat.
Papa Francesco ama sempre
Pope
sorprendere.
Francis does love surprises. So he is going to surprise us.
Where do you want me?
Yes, here.
Oh, okay. Grazie.
You need your stuff, your things?
And let me give you this, whatever. I may need that later.
Now we will begin the section. Sì. Vai. Adesso. Lo dico? Sì, vai. Leggi il messaggio dei bambini. Iniziamo questa sessione dando la parola a Papa Francesco.
Leaving the floor to Pope Francis, we may begin this session. Good afternoon. This is a letter children have given me. I will read it out. Dear Pope Francis, we are writing to you on behalf of the children of the whole planet. We want to thank you because you worry about us and you think about our future, you love us and you protect us. Too many children are suffering from hunger because of the war, because the color of their skin is different, because of natural and environmental disasters. We would like a world that is more fair, with no divisions between peoples, between rich and poor, between young and elderly. A world that is cleaner, where the pollution does not destroy forests, does not pollute the sea and kill animals. We have realized that it is far more important to save the planet than having a lot of money. This was written by two small children. The sixth panel will be moderated by Cardinal Mauro Gambetti, Archbishop of St. Peter's Basilica and Vicar for the Vatican City. Thank you, Your Holiness. We have listened to a number of very interesting presentations and speeches. This panel is on the child's right to free time and leisure, which is no less important. This right is enshrined in the UN Convention on the Right of the Child, And it says a lot about the fact that we really want to take care of children and protect them, because this right to rest, to leisure, to free time, to cultural and artistic activities, this right actually enables the development of that personal and general well-being that a child needs and has the right to. Several studies clearly show that there are a number of benefits for the physical, cognitive, emotional and social growth of a child deriving from leisure and free time. So we can immediately think of situations where these rights are clearly denied. I'm thinking of war-torn regions, regions struck by poverty. I mean, we've heard a lot about this. But the same can happen in educational environments where there is a strong emphasis on academic results, which greatly reduces the time for leisure and for relaxing. So even when it comes to the right to free time and leisure, again, we should stress the need to give children enough time. That is a very valuable thing. This panel features some authoritative speakers. This panel must go back to the roots of the meaning of the title of the panel itself. We must look at the true value of free time and leisure. Time that is free from violence, from exploitation, free from structured tasks, free from tasks that are too demanding, free from hyper-protection or pre-ordered ideas of protection. This is the path we should be pursuing. In the backdrop, there is a question that the speakers may answer. For a child, what is a space for free time, for leisure, for recreational activities, for sharing, for being on your own, for playing, for silence? These are some of the factors that fill with meaning the void of free time. This way, children can feel respected and duly considered, and not just objects that must meet expectations, more or less legitimate, or be the recipients of attentions and products of the economic system, of the modern consumeristic economic system. So now I am very pleased to leave the floor to Mr. Thomas Bach, President of the International Olympic Committee.
Thank you very much, Your Holiness, Eminences, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. From the moment they take their first steps, children are naturally drawn to movement. Running, jumping and playing comes as instinctively as breathing. Sport and physical activity are not merely pastimes for children. They are expressions of their innate need for growth, self-discovery and connection. They are integral to personality development and critical to education. Through sport, children gain much more than health. They learn the principles of teamwork, discipline and fair play. They learn the importance of rules, mutual respect and the joy of striving together toward a shared goal. These universal values are woven into the fabric of sport. The Olympic movement has always championed these values. Our founder, Pierre de Coubertin, saw sport already as a way to make the world a better place through sport and its values. This is our mission until today. As an educator, Coubertin knew of this intrinsic link between sport and values. Through sport, we celebrate respect for the rules, respect for oneself, and respect for others. We build friendships that transcend any boundaries. We promote solidarity and peace. These fundamental Olympic values are values that we share with Christianity. Solidarity and peace in particular are shared pillars of faith and sport, as we have just recently experienced together at the Olympic Games Paris 2024, where we managed to have the athletes of all 206 national Olympic committees and the IOC refugee Olympic team competing peacefully and living at the same time peacefully together under one roof in the Olympic village. And we can congratulate one of the great supporters of this refugee Olympic team, the Holy Father, who was supporting it from the very beginning and was rewarded for his engagement with the first ever Olympic medal having been won by a refugee in the Olympic Games in Paris. These values underscore why we consider sport a fundamental human right. Yes, it is not enough to recognize this right in our Olympic Charter. We have the responsibility to ensure that every child has the opportunity to enjoy this right. To achieve this, sport must be safe. Sport must be a space free from abuse and exploitation. This is why the IOC has invested in innovative safeguarding measures with the assistance of AI, so that sport can truly be a force for good in every child's life. Allow me to share just two examples of how the IOC is living up to this responsibility. The Olympic Values Education Program reaches over 60 million children annually, embedding sport and physical education in curricula around the world. Last year in India alone, over 12 million children learned about excellence, friendship and respect through sports-based school programs. Values that will guide them not only on the playing field, but throughout their lives. From Greece to Senegal, from Oman to Montenegro, from Italy to China, across the globe, Olympic values education programs are being adopted at national levels, giving access to sport and the Olympic values for every child. Another way we are walking the talk is through our Olympic Refuge Foundation, which brings sports to the world's most vulnerable children, those living in refugee camps and displaced communities. As a result of our work, more than 1 million young people on 4 continents have been given access to safe sport, which is so vital for their physical and mental well-being. Through sport, these children and youngsters find stability and belonging, moments of solidarity and peace in the midst of upheaval. All these initiatives underscore the unique role of sport in education and spreading universal values. Sport is so much more than just physical activity. Sport is health. Sport is inclusion. Sport is respect. It's empowerment. Sport is solidarity. Sport is peace. Today, thanks to the initiative of the Holy Father, we are reminded of our collective responsibility to build a better world for our children. To achieve this, we have to act faster, aim higher, be stronger, and we have to join hands. This is why I invite everyone present here today, whatever your mission in life, join hands with us to ensure that every child can enjoy their right to safe sport. In this spirit, let us live the Olympic motto, faster, higher, stronger, together. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Thomas. We receive your appeal safe and secure sport. We want to have it all. So I would like to give the floor to the President of the Commission on Artificial Intelligence for information. There's the Italian Commission, Mr. Paolo Benanti. Well, Holy Father, Eminences, distinguished guests, it's a great pleasure to be here with you.
As a Franciscan, but trained by Jesuits, I will have the privilege to make the ethicist, so to make question and run away before giving any kind of answer. And I'm focusing on three questions on what does it mean to be a kid in this digital age. First, what does it mean to be a children in this time? According to statistics, there is an average time spent on a display of 5 hours of every day for every children. And in the world, just to give some number, we have 8 billion, 100 million and counting people, with 6 billion, 100 million and counting mobile phones. But only 27 million of people are able to code, are able to understand the machine. That means that 99.75% of people are simple passive users of such kind of technology. And according to the global statistics, in a huge part of the global south, it's much more easy to find a technology such as cellular tower than not a standard toilet. And according to UNESCO, it's much more easy in the global south to read a paper on a display than not on paper. So growing up today means growing up in a life that is also digital. And now the question becomes, is digital a place where is given free time and leisure? Well, this question has to face with some kind of elements of the digital space that are used to be called algorithms. And we know very well that the last 10 years of our economy grow thanks to what we call attention economy. Every algorithm that impacts the life of a kid is something that is trying to attract him to the display, to monetize the data and the amount of time spent on such device. And just probably every one of you is aware that cities like New York City and other cities in the global United States sued the platform because such kind of algorithms are able to give an addictive behavior to the kids. More than that, the big video game platforms are infused with player behavior algorithms that study the behavior of such kids and use such behavior to drive them in a choice architecture to allow them to shop the products that they desire to shop. And at the end, the new face of such kind of algorithm, AI algorithm, are moving such economy to what is called intention economy. Intention is an attention deployed on time that is able to profile kids and also to drive their desire in some shaped form. Well, and that brings us to the last question, what we can do. I think that the first things that we have to ask to ourselves, if it's not time to recognize a cognitive and an emotional rights for the kids. Isn't it the time to have something like a nutrition fact label that make the kids aware if in the system that they are using there is applied such kind of algorithm or artificial intelligence tools that would like to handle or hack their attention, their intention, and their emotion. And secondly, there is a parent's right to know how safe is the space that they are living for the kids. I think that now it's time to act together to deploy something, such things like such kind of label to make customers much more aware of what they are facing and giving them the power to mitigate the bad effect of such kind of actors and give back free time and leisure to the children. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Paolo. Thank you for reminding us that free time and leisure And the use of technological devices, of this kind of technology, must somehow be monitored when it comes to children. I leave now the floor to Mr. Michael Marek, chairperson of the Order of the Smile.
Drogi Ojcze Święty, dostojni przywódcy, eminencje, ekscelencje, szanowni goście.
Guests, I wish to stress a value that has often been neglected, but that is fundamental for reciprocal happiness and for the dignity of all children. That's the right to leisure and rest. It is enshrined in Article 31 of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, but it is too often restricted in a world full of inequalities. Every child, regardless of their origin, financial situation, or economic situation, has human dignity. Janusz Korczak reminded us of this fundamental principle when he said, there are no children, there are people. Education based on respect for the dignity of the child requires that we recognize their right to rest, play freely, and develop their passions. This doesn't mean we care. It means implementing the principle that every child has a value in themselves and their well-being should be our priority. While the world has made great progress in protecting children's rights, millions of children still live in conditions that violate their dignity. Children in war zones such as Syria, Ukraine, Palestine, or Yemen are losing the opportunity to experience proper childhood. Their free time is transformed into a fight for survival. Children forced to work hard in factories or fields. Those who suffer physical and psychological violence are deprived of a basic sense of security. In the face of these challenges, we wonder, how can we talk about the right to free time, to leisure, when millions of children are hungry, have no access to education, to clean water, and more? It is precisely in these difficult conditions that this right grows even more important as a symbol of hope. We must not forget that children are not just recipients of support, but also full participants of social life. The participation of children, which Korczak mentioned, consists of enabling them to express their needs and opinions. Children know best what gives them joy and the best way to rest, and it is our duty to listen to them. Poland, being the homeland of Janusz Korczak and initiator of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, has been working for years for the younger ones. UNICEF, the Order of the Smile, the Ombudsman for Children's Rights are examples of all this. The well-being of the child must be at the core of every debate. What we consider to be the well-being of the child includes not just meeting their basic needs, but also enabling them to develop in an atmosphere of safety, joy, and respect. Modern childhood takes place in a reality dominated by two contradictory dynamics: free time and so-called fast time. Their influence on the lives of the youngest is not only very diverse, but also crucial in the context. So crucial. In his thoughts and his reflections, His Holiness Pope Francis once pointed out there is true and false rest. Modern society imposes a fast pace on children, tight schedules full of schoolwork, homework, and so on. In the digital world, this also means constantly receiving notifications and pressure to be available. Children often fall victim to this rush culture, to this fast culture, fast-paced. They are overloaded with responsibilities, and they lose space and time for free play and rest. As a result, they are stressed, overburdened, and burned out. And Experts are increasingly warning that this kind of pressure is depriving them of their childhood. Free time and leisure is a moment of freedom, of rest, and discovering the world at your own pace. It is not just a form of respite. It is an opportunity, a real opportunity. His Holiness Pope Francis pointed out that the modern world, while offering more entertainment, does not provide true rest. I quote, "Man has never rested as much as he does today, and yet he has never experienced so much emptiness," he pointed out. So end of quote. He pointed out that rest must not be fleeing from reality, but should be a blessing. It is impossible to completely eliminate this fast-paced time, but finding balance is essential. Children have the right to real rest and moments of free moments. These moments of leisure is fundamental for a healthy childhood that must be preserved. By giving a child the time to be a child, we allow them to discover themselves, discover their talents and passions. A well-rested child is a happy, healthy child. That is why I'm calling on us to work together to protect the free time and leisure of children across the world, from conflict zones to classrooms and playgrounds. May the words of His Holiness, the Holy Father, and the thought of Janusz Korczak lead us to a world where the well-being of the child, the dignity of the child, and the need for rest of the child shall always be a priority. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Marek, for having recalled the importance of healthy rest, because it's also creative, as God's rest, who rests by creating, regenerating the world. Now I'll give the floor to Mr. Wang, who is the Executive President CEO of the East-West Philanthropy Forum. I have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Your Holy Father, distinguished guests, I'm so honored to join this important and wonderful summit on children. So, I would like to share my perspective on children's right to free time and leisure. As you know, Article 31 of the 1989 UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, as a legally binding international human rights treaty, has laid a solid legal foundation for recognizing and protecting child's right to free time and leisure. However, it contains some flaws needed to be fixed. First of all, as physically, intelligently, legally incompetent or restrained minors, how can child freely and individually choose from their inside what to do for their free time or leisure without consultation or permission of their adult guardians? The ultimate goal of Article 31 is not just for claiming child's rights, but for promoting child's well-being. So guaranteeing the quality and the benefits of free time and leisure to child's health and development is equally important to child's access to free time and leisure. Traditionally, child's right to free time and leisure is more likely to be jeopardized by reasons directly related to war, violence, disease, drugs, economy, or formal education. But nowadays, electronic devices, internet, and artificial intelligence are posing equal, if not greater, challenges towards child's free time and leisure. How can the balance between relaxation and indulgence be kept for child's free time and leisure? After 36 years, 196 countries have ratified Article 31, but it is reported that only 9 countries have established national-level policies or strategies to implement it by 2023. So another key question emerges: how should a child's right to free time and leisure on paper be realized as a right in reality? My answers are PPP and the CCC. Although the Article 31 are mainly requiring state parties, the realization of a child's right to free time and leisure is only viable with strong private-public partnership, PPP, calling for collaborations between state parties and private companies, as well as non-profit organizations. Meanwhile, a CCC, caregiver-child consensus, should be established based on legal requirement, professional research, and individual preference. Philanthropy can play a crucial role in promoting child's right to free time and leisure with the PPP and the CCC. On one hand, philanthropy can explore new methods and models to increase child's access to her or his right of enjoying free time and leisure, or to improve child's well-being through activities that add her or his free time and leisure. On the other hand, caregivers and the state parties can adopt and scale up those proven successful experiences. I would like to use China as one example. In order to save their precious free time and leisure to more healthy purposes, Chinese government has used the legal approach to control minors overburdened by formal and informal education, as well as their potential indulgence in online gaming. Since July 2021, both curricular burdens by public schools and extracurricular exam-driven tutoring by private companies have been curbed by Chinese government. Since June 1st, 2021, Article 75 of the PRC Minors Protection Law prohibits online game providers to provide services to minors between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. daily. Other Chinese laws only allow online game companies to provide 1-hour services to minors between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. on weekends and national holidays. So meanwhile, artistic and sports activities are called on to fill the vacuum in child's free time and leisure. Many philanthropy organizations take on these rare and needed responsibilities. For example, in order to increase rural children's access to more quality free time with the guidance and the coordination of China-Italy Philanthropy Forum, Beijing Lao New Brother and Sister Foundation and the Xenia Foundation jointly initiated a new program called Renaissance for Children, combining the art education and the gender equality in remote northwestern China since 2020. Meanwhile, Yao Foundation, founded by basketball star Yao Ming, has been partnering with many other foundations and non-profit organizations to promote basketball, soccer, and other sports in rural Chinese schools since 2012. So both programs are great philanthropy examples of PPP and the CCC, strongly supported by Chinese governmental agencies, and hopefully to be adopted by the Chinese government as national policies in the near future. So at the end, I want to echo, Madam Anark and Mr. Graby's calling on actions. I think philanthropy, especially international philanthropy collaboration, may be one effective way to put our actions behind our words for children. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wang, thank you for reminding us that there is a great need for an alliance between public and private spheres, an intergenerational alliance and an alliance that is international if we want to achieve the goals that we have set ourselves, namely to restore the rights of children. I now leave the floor to the Holy Father if he wishes to say something.
We are
drawing to a close.
Rights right to live free from violence, il diritto dei bambini a vivere in un mondo senza violenza. Il primo pannello.
The first panel will be child labor and exploitation. I leave the floor to Cardinal Fabio Baggio, General Director of the Laudato Si Center for Training.
Was Leader Summit on Children's Rights for giving me the opportunity to moderate this panel dedicated to the child's right to live free from violence. I would like to introduce this panel quoting the catechesis delivered by the Holy Father in the general audience on Wednesday, 8th of January 2025. I quote, "Nowadays we want to turn our gaze towards Mars or towards virtual worlds, but we struggle to look in the eyes of a child who has been left at the margins and who is exploited and abused. The century that generates artificial intelligence and plans multiplanetary existences has not yet reckoned with the scourge of humiliated, exploited, mutually wounded childhood. Let us think about this." The Gospel reveals Jesus' particular love for children, whom he holds up as a model for all those who decide to enter into the kingdom of heaven. His disciples, as well all people of goodwill, are called to make every effort to ensure that children are not robbed of their childhood and their dreams, especially by the brutality of war and the scourge of child labor. In the general audience on Wednesday, 15th of January 2025, Pope Francis reiterated his deep concern for the violence to which the little ones are exposed, listing some particularly dramatic situations. I quote, "Even today in the world, hundreds of millions of minors, despite not being at the minimum age to undergo the obligation of adulthood, are forced to work, and many of them are exposed to particularly dangerous work, not to mention the boys and girls who are slaves to trafficking for prostitution or pornography, and forced marriages. And this is rather bitter. In our societies, unfortunately, there are many ways in which children are abused and mistreated. As individuals, as a church, as a society, we are called to act concretely." Now, I am honored to introduce the speakers of this panel, starting from Philippe van Winnegem. As Chief of Fundamental Principles and Rights at the World Branch Governance and Tripartism Department of the International Labour Organization. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Your Holiness, Your Majesty, Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the International Labour Organization, Director General Gilbert Humbo, let me first thank you for the opportunity to address this distinguished group. Children's rights are under pressure as never in recent times. 1 month ago, I had the privilege to visit one of our projects in a mine in Democratic Republic of Congo, and I met Jean-François, a 15-year-old boy who collects cobalt, who is so important for this critical device. There is today 160 million children like Jean-François in child labor. Half are in what we define hazardous work. 70% work in small-scale farming and small-scale mining. This figure comes from the ILO and UNICEF. This is a brutal and cruel injustice, and we just cannot be indifferent, as it was rightly said this morning. It is a question of living up to commitment the world has made to children. And the political will exists. 26 years ago, the ILO adopted the Convention 182 on the worst forms of child labor. In 2020, it became the very first ILO convention to reach universal ratification. It requires immediate and effective action to end abuse, such as slavery, debt bondage, the use of children in armed conflict, commercial sexual exploitation of children, and hazardous work that put their health, safety, and even their lives in jeopardy. ILO Convention 138 complements this by establishing a minimum age for work, while ensuring that children's right to compulsory education is protected. These legal protections are essential, but implementation is lacking. So let me give basically three messages here. First, we know the solution. We know what to do. We need very clearly universal, free and compulsory quality education. We need social protection so that families are not obliged to resort to child labor when a family member falls sick or loses his job. We need adequate enforcement, including by having more and better equipped labor inspection. And above all, we need decent work for the parents, for the adults, so they can earn enough to send their children to school and meet other basic needs. Secondly, we need a bit less words and a bit more action to take Jean-François out of child labor. Target 8.7 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals requires member states to take immediate and effective measures to eradicate forced labor and modern slavery and human trafficking by 2030, and secure the prohibition and elimination of the worst forms of child labor, including recruitment and use of child labor by 2025, and ending child labor in all its forms. We know, unfortunately, that we will not reach the target for ending child labor. This is a moral failure that will resonate for decades to come. The hopes of tens of millions of children for a better future are seriously compromised, and whole society will be worse off as the cycle of poverty and child labor continues. But it is not a cause to give up hope. Our resolve must be stronger than ever. So this is my last and third message. We need more cooperation than ever. Government, trade union, businesses, civil society, faith-based organizations and affected community must work together. There is a huge potential to accelerate progress against child labor by improving coordination and promoting collective response. This is why in 2016 the ILO launched the Alliance 8.7, an inclusive global partnership with the mission to assist all UN member states to fulfill their commitment to achieve Target 8.7. The Alliance brings together a wide range of stakeholders to collaborate, strategize, share knowledge on innovative approach. More recently, under the leadership of the ILO DG, the Global Coalition for Social Justice has started. I truly encourage all organizations who are not already members of those vital partnerships to join. The double call to action adopted at the 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labour held in South Africa in 2020 sets out 49 concrete actions across a range of priorities. Implementation is really the key roadmap that must be done. In 2026, next year, the 6th Global Conference will be held in Morocco. It's a valuable opportunity to mobilize the global community to promote joint action at the scale requires. Let's act together to meet the commitments made to children, relegate child labour to history, and give Jean-François a decent future and enjoy these fundamental labour rights.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dana Yunmaid. She is responsible for driving the ministry's international collaboration agenda. She manages intercultural relations and partnership for the ministry, working closely with law enforcement agencies and international organizations across the world. She also heads the Secretariat of the International Security Alliance. Madam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Your All Holiness, Your Majesty, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, old friends and new. Allow me to address some of the most pressing challenges facing children globally involving violence, child labor and exploitation. These issues continue to devastate the life of millions of children around the world. Today, we live in an era defined by rapid technological advancement. The rise of artificial intelligence and the proliferation of apps and digital platforms have fundamentally changed the way we communicate, interact, and learn. While these technologies offer unprecedented opportunities, they also bring significant challenges. Among these challenges is the increasing threat of online exploitation, particularly the sexual exploitation of children. Some cases I worked on personally included victims as young as 3 months old, victimized by caregivers and parents. We just, at single click, individuals can access limitless information and connect with others around the world. However, the same connectivity has opened doors for those who seek to harm the most vulnerable members of our communities, our children. The scale of this problem is alarming. According to the We Protect Global Alliance, in 2023 alone, more than half of 18 years old survived globally reported experiencing some form of online sexual harm during their childhood. Additionally, according to the Childhood Global Child Safety Institute, over 300 million children, 1 in 8, were victimized by online sexual exploitation and abuse in the past year alone. These figures are not just statistics. They represent real children whose lives have forever altered by these heinous acts. Each case of exploitation leaves lasting scars on the victim, impacting their well-being and development, and stay as a digital footprint online forever. Unfortunately, social media companies are not doing enough to stop the harm being done to children online. Be it child trafficking or the spread of child sexual abuse material on the platform. These platforms must be held accountable. Governments, civil society, and faith leaders must demand safer safeguards, proactive detention measures, and greater accountability. We cannot allow profit or convenience to outweigh the safety and dignity of the most vulnerable members of our society. And we also cannot allow privacy on the expense of children. As part of our mission to build a safer world for children, one group holds immense and often overlooked power: faith leaders. Throughout history, faith leaders have provided guidance, compassion, and advocacy for those in need. Today, they have a critical role to play in supporting children who have been deprived by protection they deserve. More importantly, faith leaders and communities have unique social, spiritual, and infrastructural assets that can be deployed to secure children's rights. Their reach is immense, spanning the large cities to small villages. Governments and policymakers need to reach out and work together with faith communities to secure the rights of children. Equally important is this effort are the voices of children themselves. We cannot bring long-lasting change without involving children in our discussion and initiative. In November last year, I had the honor of collaborating with Arigato International to host the 6th Forum of Global Network of Religions for Children. We hosted 600 participants from 90 countries and 35 countries representing 60 children. And I want to summarize what they said with one thing. All we want is a safe, secure, and a sustainable world. It shouldn't be impossible. There are adults around us in this world who work in different sectors that can make this happen. We need to leave narrow-minded agendas back, and we need to focus on one thing, and one thing only: righteous approaches to bringing safety, security, and sustainability to children around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marta Belloni. She is an Argentinian sister at the Congregation of Eurasian Carmelite Missionaries. She is a professor and rector of the Colegio del Carmen y de San José in Catamarca, Argentina. Sister, the floor is yours.
Querido Papa Francisco,
Dear Pope Francis, brothers and sisters, we are gathered here to safeguard the Declaration of the Rights of the Child, asking the countries that have not yet joined to join as of this summit. In Argentina, since 1989, It has constitutional rank and hierarchy. And yet we find ourselves today with a huge gap. There's a huge gap between laws and reality. This is why the articles of the International Convention call for an organization. We should organize ourselves to fight for our children and their rights, the right to equality, right to a dignified life, right to education, right to health. Today in Argentina, social poverty is structural, and it is the cause of greater and greater and more complex, ever more complex violence in children. The violence of the abuse of power of the state is both the main cause of corruption in the institutions that take care of children. As long as human and social rights are not educated and integrated in the states and governments, we will have to fight hard in social organizations to make sure that governments defend and enforce these principles. With this current and existing reality and the lack of protection of the children's rights, we find that Articles 34, 35 and 36 of the Convention against sexual abuse and exploitation, the smuggling and trafficking are not complied with. So other organizations must step in. Young unemployed parents who take drugs and mistreat their children, which causes the state to take away their children, who are taken to special centers. And they have also been reported on several occasions for mistreatment. In this situation of children, the law compels them to be given up for adoption after 180 days. The saddest thing is that in many family courts there is corruption in the sale of these adopted children. These are unthinkable amounts of money. Surrogacy is not only exploitation of life and human dignity. It is often an open door. It paves the way for the sale of babies on the internet. It is a new form of human smuggling through cybernetics, through the web, through IT. Children working in slums and neighborhoods in a very vulnerable situation. Many of them, already aged 10, start selling drugs. Others take drugs and go out to steal. More and more of these children drop out of school. Many of them have nobody who takes care of them. Some simply leave. And there's an aggravating factor. The loss of values in society is due to the decadence. And this leads to multiple forms of violence. Children who are not educated with an integrated sexuality consume pornography starting at the age of 9. There is great fear for them. There are 12 and 13-year-old girl mothers who have to face immature motherhood. Children are sexually exploited in their own homes or sold into prostitution and trafficking. Children are stolen from clinics and hospitals. Others are abducted to be sexually exploited in pedophilia, exploited in child labor, and sent out to beg on the streets, or organ trafficking. Pope Francis a few days ago mentioned the lone case in Corrientes, with one of the possibilities being organ trafficking, which is more present than we think. It is is a business involving clinics, hospitals, psychiatric hospitals with doctors, nurses, ambulance drivers, police, agents and lawyers all involved. The amount of money involved is so big that it brings about greater silence. That is why this subject is never mentioned. So people believe it doesn't exist. Child labor in the Argentinian countryside is another reality. The most punished families of children were taken to Argentina to harvest tomatoes and peppers, say, for example, from Bolivia. They're called golondrinas, and they live in the fields of rich people in very poor conditions. They suffer from the abuse of agrotoxics, which have caused the death of children and abnormal births. The judiciary is tipping the balance in the defense of the rich. Human dignity, which has been very abused by the monetary and capital interests of our countries, called us to fight for what? And we are here to confirm that. We join the call of Pope Francis with the Jubilee of this year, 2025. We must find the way of peace with the hope that it won't be defeated.
Thank you very much, Sister.
Satyarthi is an Indian social reformer who campaigned against child labor in India and advocated the universal right to education. In 2014, he was the co-recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize along with Malala Yousafzai. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Your Holiness, Pope Francis, Your Majesty, dear sisters and brothers, I would like to express my deep gratitude at the outstart to Pope Francis for giving us this opportunity at this critical juncture where our children are facing the biggest crisis. When I was listening to the letter children have written to His Holiness, I am more confident that children of the world consider him as their friend, not as the Holy Father. And people like us also consider, who are fighting for the dignity and freedom of children, we considered you as our friend. I joined all of you in clapping everyone after every speech. This is perhaps because I have faith and trust in your concern and your action for children. But at the same time, I feel ashamed. I'm ashamed because we are failing our children every day. I'm ashamed to listen to all these data and statistics that I have been listening and talking for the last 45 years. How many children are enslaved? How many children are sold and bought like animals and lesser prices than animals? They are not statistics, they are human beings. Some years ago, as my usual work, when I rescued a group of young children from stone mining, they were all bonded labor for generations, 3 generations. An 8-year-old girl who was traumatized, I was trying to console her and others. She suddenly put her hand on my head, on my back, and asked, oh man, why didn't you come sooner? It was not because she was freed that day, it was because her mother was raped in front of her eyes. And when her father tried to save his wife, he was poked with cigarette. The girl has seen the death of her younger brother in her lap. This was the cry, this was the call of a child, not to me, but to everyone who believe in God, to everyone who believe in Constitution, to everyone who believe in humanity. We have to listen to this cry. I'm not talking and repeating all those datas. We know the problems, we know the solutions. But the children who are producing wealth at the cost of their childhood and freedom, whose children are they? Children whose cries are not heard. Innocent children were killed in Gaza, in Ukraine, Syria, different places in the world. Whose children are they? Children who are sold and bought. Whose children are they? They are your children. They are your children. They are your children, they are my children, they are our children. If we don't have that connection and feeling with our children, the warm words are not enough. So, dear friends, we have to go deep into the problem. Rhetorics are not enough. The problem is that we are losing a sense of urgency. There is a serious deficit of moral accountability and moral responsibility, and that is growing. There is a growing gap, and that is also deepening, the gap between the problem solvers and the problem sufferers. We are not really honest to the problem sufferers. This is the problem. And the solution lies in the genuine feeling and connection and an honest urge to take urgent action. And that is compassion. And that is the reason we cannot solve these problems in business as usual manner. We can keep on sitting and coming and talking and coming with good words. But as someone who has freed 130,000 children along with his friends from slavery, me, in my country, resulted in scars in all my body, my broken leg, my broken shoulder, my broken head, my broken back. I can say, on the basis of my experience, someone who was the initiator, the founder and head of two largest global movements, the Global Campaign for Education and Global March Against Child Labor, I can say that business as usual won't work. And that's why we have to dig out some solutions. And that lies in compassion. I'm not talking about just kindness, mercy, benevolence, empathy, sympathy. These are good human traits, but they are not going to solve the deep-rooted problems which have its genesis in systems and structures and institutions, and that perpetuates in itself. It is the compassion. Compassion is the feeling for the suffering of others with an inner compulsion, to take urgent action to solve the problems of others as you know the problem. And that is needed in the world. Your Holiness, we have globalized markets, economies, data, supply, production, constitutions, laws. World has never been so wealthy as it is today, so well informed as it is today. But our children are calling us. This is the time to globalize compassion. And that is the reason I have launched a new movement, new initiative, Satyarthi Movement for Global Compassion, to define, to launch a new idea of compassion quotient, to measure the compassion and enhance the level of compassion in individuals, institutions, societies, and in the nations. We have to fight out this menace and all other crises through compassion and action. We have to create a culture of problem solving. Let us globalize compassion because they are all our children. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Salvatore Sciacchitano. In 2010, he was appointed Executive Secretary of the European Civil Aviation Conference. In February 2019, he joined the Italian delegation of the International Civil Aviation Organization Council. Now he is the President of the same International Civil Aviation Organization Council. The floor is yours.
Holy Father, Your Majesty, Excellency, Ministers, distinguished world leaders. The speaker on my left said, we know what to do. That's true. We all know that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 8 has a specific target, target number 8.7, which urges action by all countries in a global partnership to take immediate and effective measures to eradicate forced labor, to end modern slavery and human trafficking, and to secure the prohibition and elimination of the worst forms of child labor. Additionally, the UN Sustainable Development Goal 16.2 urges states to end abuse, exploitation, trafficking, and all forms of violence against and torture of children, which draws specific attention to end human trafficking. Now, you can wonder, what about ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization I represent here as the president? The International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, is a specialized agency of the United Nations for international civil aviation and is fully committed to combating these heinous crimes, actively contributing to the UN Global Plan of Action to combat trafficking in persons. There are no specific statistics regarding human trafficking in aviation, but I deeply regret to confirm that aviation, as the most efficient means of global transport, has been subverted by traffickers at a shocking scale. This is unacceptable. Consequently, every state and air operator must be prepared and take all necessary measures to prevent trafficking through their air services. ICAO's role is to guide and to help governments and aviation industries, airlines, airports, security companies to have all the tools they need. And the added value of this organization is the membership of 193 member states, so that these policies can be brought in each of them. On the basis of Assembly resolutions and the adoption of standards and recommended practices, ICAO has adopted a comprehensive strategy for combating human trafficking in the aviation sector. This is focused mainly on preparation of the crew, pilots, personnel that have direct contact with the passengers to identify through training and tools behavior indications that could identify possible trafficking and reporting to points of contact so that this information can be immediately shared and actions could be taken. In closing, let me stress that we know that human trafficking cannot be tackled alone. Success requires a unified approach, bringing together governments, airlines, airports, civil society, and international organizations. Together, we must strengthen legislation and enforcement mechanisms, foster public-private partnerships to build resilient systems and provide victim-centered support to prioritizing their dignity and recovery. We know what to do. We must do. Finally, just one word mentioning that recently I've been contacted by the Secretary of State of the Holy See in order to establish cooperation with ICAO. The Holy See is not a member of ICAO, but the accession to the Chicago Convention, cooperation with the ICAO, could boost, could promote the policies against human trafficking. I hope and will be very much available to support this process. Thank you very much for your attention.
I would like to thank all the speakers for their inspiring and passionate contribution to this panel. And so I'm giving back the floor to the chair of the summit.
Andiamo all'ultimo focus.
Now we come to the last panel.
Che presenterà il Cardinale Angelo Fernandez Artime.
Presented by Cardinal Angelo Fernandez Artime, Proprietor of the Dicastery for Institute of Consecrated Life and Societies of Apostolic Life. The theme of conflicts and ecological disasters is a sensitive issue. Now you have the floor. Holy Father, Queen Rania, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, each soldier child is a cry to God. These are the words of the Holy Father, Pope Francis, the Fund of the United Nations for Children. UNICEF estimates that over 100,000 children are currently involved in armed forces and groups in different roles, as cooks, messengers, spies, warriors, all for sexual exploitation. Said by the Holy Father, the soldier children are robbed of their childhood, of their innocence, of their future, and often of their own lives. And the Pope stresses that each one of them is a cry that goes to God, accusing adults for having put weapons in their small hands. And there are many international organizations or NGOs that always work to save these children, but the reality shows that there is a long way to go. Unfortunately, physical, psychological damage is really significant for these children, and the consequences are irreversible. In the worst cases, the future will always remain undermined, and they will never be able to recover in their lives. So, and then we have to take care and protect the common home. The dilemma is to understand whether we work for the culture of life or for the culture of death. Again, I quote to the Holy Father, that is, either we go on not listening to the cry of the earth and we go towards further deterioration and destruction of the planet, destruction that will be our demise, and which is an offense to God, or we work for the culture of life, and so we have to be careful and listen to the cry of the earth. So we have to listen to the requests of the poor, and then we have to develop a new financial architecture that is able to meet the needs of the global south and of the countries that are severely affected by climate change, thus recognizing the ecological debt. And of course, we need a roadmap to protect our common home. And I again quote Pope Francis. So, in the face of negationism that experts present here know all too well, there is space for the revolution in small and daily things. And so this is why we give the floor to three highly distinguished speakers. The first is Ahmed Nasser Al-Raisi, President of Interpol. Please, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Your Holiness, Your Majesty, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to stand before you today at this significant gathering, the World Leaders Summit on Children's Rights. Before we begin, I would like to extend my gratitude to His Holiness, the Pope, for announcing this summit and for his commitment to the welfare of children worldwide. In a moment of profound urgency and moral responsibility, world leaders from governments, private sectors, and humanitarian organizations are gathering here at the Vatican. Guided by the composition and wisdom of His Holiness Pope Francis, this is not just a meeting, it's a global commitment to the most vulnerable among us. It's a reminder that every child, regardless of their background, deserves to grow up in an environment where they are loved, protected, and given the opportunity to thrive. As the President of Interpol, I am deeply committed to this mission. Interpol's dedication to fighting crimes and sexual exploitation against children is firm. Our approach, both online and offline, demonstrates a comprehensive strategy to ensure the safety of our children. Allow me to highlight some of the critical initiatives and resources employed by Interpol in this regard. The International Child Sexual Exploitation Database. This powerful platform enables law enforcement agencies around the globe to identify victims and perpetrators by sharing information and collaborating across borders. Interpol has made a significant progress in dismantling child exploitation network. Sexual abuse and exploitation, trafficking, forced labor, and abduction are just some of the dangers faced by children around the world today. At Interpol, we work to address those crimes that have an international dimension. In 2024 alone, Interpol efforts have led to the rescue of over 10,726 identified victims across the world from situations of abuse and exploitation. These are not just numbers. These are lives transformed, future restored, and families reunited. Each child saved represents a victory for humanity, a testament to the commitment of those who work tirelessly to protect the innocents. Interpol's efforts, ladies and gentlemen, extends beyond rescue operations. We are focused on stopping offenders and preventing future crimes by maintaining a comprehensive database of known offenders and collaborating with national law enforcement agencies. Interpol helps to monitor and apprehend those who pose the threat to children. This proactive approach is crucial in creating a safer world for young ones. Moreover, Interpol is actively engaged in initiatives to keep children safe online. In today's digital age, the Internet can be both a tool for education and a platform for exploitation. Interpol's cybercrime expertise worked hard to identify and dismantle online networks that prey on children. Our efforts have led to the shutdown of numerous dark web platforms and the arrest of 4,148 identified offenders last year alone. With ongoing technology advancement and the high exposure of children to the cyber world, organizations like Interpol have a key role to play in ensuring the safety and security of these vulnerable communities. As children increasingly interact with digital platforms, it's important that we stay ahead of emerging threats and adapt our strategies to protect them. While we celebrate these successes, we must also acknowledge that the fight is far from over. Every day, countless children around the world remain vulnerable to abuse and exploitation. It's our collective duty to remain vigilant, to strengthen our efforts, and to ensure that every child is protected. In closing, I would like to stress on the importance of this summit and the theme that guide our discussions today. Love them and protect them. Let us be inspired by the stories of resilience. Let us be motivated by the knowledge that our action can make a difference. Together, we can create a world where every child is loved, every child is safe, and every child has the opportunity to lead a happy life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamet. Ci rivolge la parola.
I now leave the floor to Ibrahim Faltas, custodian of the Holy Land.
Santità,
Your Holiness,
Maestà,
Majesty, Eminences, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I thank you for inviting me to this very important summit, because sharing information and opinions on the well-being of children is the first step on the way to peace, to truth and justice. I am a Franciscan friar, custodian of the Holy Land, that for 800 years has been guarding the holy places. For 36 years I've been experiencing the beauty and difficulties of the Holy Land. It is a holy land, but it has been always suffering a lot. I work with schools. I know the dreams of children. I know the dreams of the children who live in the Holy Land. They're the same dreams and same needs of other children across the world. Children who live in conflict areas, who live tensions. But in the Holy Land, children and youths experience the same sort of condition of their parents, of their grandparents, who once had their age. The war that has begun time ago has brought about great destruction. It has multiplied. It has multiplied the suffering of Palestinian and Israeli children alike. In Gaza, they have suffered hunger, thirst, cold, heat, the lack of medical care, the lack of education. We lacked all essential needs. We lacked essential rights. The truce, the longed-for peace may give relief to the children, but it will be almost impossible to wipe out the visible and invisible traumas that the children suffered. on their bodies and in their minds. Many of them have lost their parents, their grandparents, their brothers, sisters. They have lost their points of reference that can support their growth and development. A whole lot of children were born over the past 16 months. The life that grows amid this rubble is truly a sign of hope that never disappoints us, that can really open up our heart. There are many children who have been killed over the past 16 months, and many of them did not get the chance to cure themselves and save themselves. For the second year running, children cannot go to school because the schools have been razed to the ground. 39,000 youths last year could not sit the final exam at school, and that will be the case for many other children and youths this year as well. I've talked to some of them to try to understand how I can help them even remotely. I really felt their suffering because they see no future. They are losing hope. Concurrently, however, my thoughts also go to their friends who have lost their lives. And I think about the future of a land, of a war-torn land. War destroys life, destroys nature, the air, water, the essential elements that are necessary for children to live. Let the children come to me, Jesus once said, and I feel that calls upon me as well. Jesus asked the adults of his era to open up their ways to the children. So likewise, I ask today's adults to welcome children, to listen to them. The classical image is Jesus sitting down listening to children, because to understand children we have to be on the same level, and children see the world through the eyes of truth, and truth begins from the simple views of the children. The way they look at us, we are a model for them, a life model for them, and it is up to us to be a positive rather than a negative life model. Jesus asks us today to protect children, and through them to protect the future of mankind. It is our responsibility, our duty to help them grow serenely and to help them develop their talents, to allow them to fulfill their dreams and ambitions. This is a commitment, a duty that we must pursue at all levels. Every single individual must feel compelled to this duty, the duty of protecting children, starting from real experiences in families, in schools. The responsibility of policymakers, of politicians, of international organizations, they are involved as well. Peace is the key, is absolutely key for everyone, for the welfare of children. Everyone must know peace, and this entails respect for life and for thy neighbor. Children must steer clear of anything that can foster violence, hatred, and the deprivation of human rights. Let children come to me. This is what Jesus said, and I feel this as like the urge, like Pope Francis too urged us. This goes for children all across the world, Russian, Ukrainian, Israeli, Palestinians, children of all religious faiths. I think that as men and women of goodwill, we feel this need. We must, but the strength to keep on hoping stems from the very appeal, from the very call of the Holy Father. Thank you, Holy Father. Your hospital, Bambino Gesù, welcomes and cures a lot of children who come from war zones. And these children represent that child that in that night in Bethlehem became the savior of the world. And in the heart, looking into the heart of children, I can say thank you, Holy Father.
Grazie.
Well, thank you,
Ibrahim, per
Ibrahim.
ultimo in questo gruppo, il panello. La
And now
parola a
I give the
Mr.
floor to
Al
Mr. Al
Premio Nobel della
Gore,
Pace,
Peace
e
Nobel
credo che lo
Prize
conosciamo
winner,
anche come
and
una
we
delle
know
prime
him one
voci
of
che
the first
fortemente,
voices
con un senso anche
that were
profetico,
raised
si è alzato per dire che
to say
il creato
prophetically
viveva una
that
grande
creation
difficoltà.
was faced with great difficulties. And you have the floor, sir.
Your Holiness, Cardinals, Your Majesty, Heads of State, distinguished guests, it truly is a great honor to be a part of this extraordinary gathering. I know of no other person, Your Holiness, who could have conceived of and convened a gathering like this. It is an honor to be among all of the distinguished speakers. I've been moved by the statements today. The threat of ecological devastation, which encompasses the climate crisis and also the biodiversity crisis, is a terrible burden that we are placing on our children. Through no action of their own, they are inheriting a planet on the precipice. As you warned in 2018, Your Holiness, on the 3rd anniversary of the release of your prophetic encyclical Laudato Si, and I quote, "There is a real danger that we will leave future generations only rubble, deserts, and refuse." You have described the spiritual crisis we face as stemming in part from the willful blindness that prevents so many from seeing the way in which our economic system is driving us toward the exploitation of both people and the planet at the expense of our moral values and the future of children. Indeed, humanity was long blind to the threat from greenhouse gas emissions, in part because the single driver of the climate crisis, carbon dioxide from the burning of fossil fuels, is an invisible, odorless, and tasteless gas. However, scientists and more recently Mother Nature have made the reality of the climate crisis plainly visible to everywhere as the damage being inflicted continues to worsen faster, yet deploying the solutions. One extremely important feature of the climate crisis that many did not really see clearly for a long time, especially prior to Laudato Si, is the now well-established evidence that a warming planet disproportionately affects the most vulnerable among us, including especially the poor, those marginalized by discrimination, especially children, infants, women, the elderly, the mentally ill, the unhoused, and agricultural workers and others who work outdoors, when the conditions for working outdoors are becoming intolerable in much larger areas of our planet. Those who have contributed the least to causing the crisis are facing its worst impacts. Perhaps those of us who are well off and comfortable in our lives are vulnerable to yet another variety of blindness. Maybe we just don't really see the plight of the poor and the vulnerable in a way that compels us to action. Once again, in your words, Your Holiness, if for whatever reason we don't really want to see, we don't see. But what we may not see, The children of our planet can already sense all around them. They feel the weight of existential dread caused by decades of inaction. We have a duty to restore their hope in the future. Children are innocent, and yet they hold the greatest burden of all as they grow up in a world of ever-increasing climate chaos. Indeed, their eyes are wide open. In 3 of the 4 Gospels, we read the story of Jesus' parable of the unfaithful servant, in which a master leaves on a journey and instructs his servant to take care of protecting the household while he is gone and being a good steward. Thieves came and ransacked the house, and the excuse given by the servant is that he was asleep. But that excuse is rejected. The Creator of our home has charged us with the responsibility of care and stewardship. We have a duty to be wakeful, not just by opening our eyes, but by opening our minds and hearts as well, and by acting to protect this earth. The unprecedented groundswell of youth activism on the climate and ecological crises we face have raised public consciousness to new levels. But to once again quote your prescient words, we must not place the burden on the next generations to take on the problems caused by the previous ones. Those that hold power today must alter our ways of thinking, and our new thinking must result in deep changes that transform our current systems of economics and politics, giving way toward a more just and ecologically minded system that puts environmental and social justice at the center of our plans and efforts. We have all of the solutions we need with proven deployment models. Some fear that we do not have the political will to implement them. But for those who doubt that we as human beings can summon sufficient political will to solve the climate crisis, please remember that political will itself is a renewable resource. Thank you.
Desidero esprimervi di cuore la mia gratitudine al termine di questo
Laudetur Jesus Christus, praise be Jesus Christ. Welcome back to this live broadcast of the first ever International Summit on Children's Rights, taking place in the Vatican. My name is Kelsey Gussie, and I'll be providing the English commentary and translation for this event. The Pope is now reading his little speech. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to you at the conclusion of this meeting on children's rights. Thanks to you, the rooms of the Apostolic Palace have today become an observatory, focused on the reality of childhood worldwide, a childhood that, unfortunately, is often wounded, exploited, and denied. Your presence, experience, and compassion have given life to this observatory, and above all, to a laboratory. In various thematic groups, you have developed proposals for the protection of children's rights, seeing them not as numbers, but as faces. Father Abraham said a phrase that I really enjoyed, I really liked. Children look at us. It's the name of a film that's very famous. Children see us. Children look at us. They look at us to see how to move forward. All of this gives glory to God, and to Him we entrust it, so that His Holy Spirit may make it fruitful and abundant. On my part, to give continuity to this commitment and promote it through the Church, I intend to prepare an apostolic exhortation dedicated to children. I express my gratitude once again to each and every one of you. Thank you to all of you, and may God bless you. This ends the live broadcast of the first ever International Summit on Children's Rights held at the Vatican's Apostolic Palace. In establishing this day for children, Pope Francis dedicated the summit to helping and protecting millions of children who are still without rights, who live in precarious conditions, who are exploited and abused, and who suffer the dramatic consequences of wars. The theme for this International Summit was Love Them and Protect Them. And throughout the day, there were several panels who spoke on specific topics, focusing on the rights of children, including access to education, rights to a family, protection from violence, and access to resources. Advocates from all over the world and walks of life came to Rome. Just as we see present Queen Rania Al Abdullah of Jordan, former Vice President Al Gore, and Magnus McFarlane Barrow, CEO of Mary's Meals.
Che ci avete proposto, l'abbiamo portato in 8 punti e chiederemo di apporre una firma a tutti voi, iniziando da Papa Francesco, da Sua Maestà la Regina, da Al Gore e dal Ministro degli Esteri italiano. Vogliamo ringraziare il Ministro rappresentante del G20 perché ha dichiarato stamattina che porterà la sua conclusione, Papa Francesco, al tavolo del G20. E questo per noi è importantissimo.
And carry on this work that Pope Francis has also stated during his address.
E ora Aldo legge gli 8 punti.
Now there are 8 points.
Dichiarazione finale del Summit mondiale sui diritti dei bambini.
Continue as we hear the 8 points for the rights of children.
I diritti dei bambini sono ancora ampiamente violati.
The rights of children who are still being violated.
Anche i bambini nelle società più ricche vanno tutelati.
Even areas where the world is full of riches, children are violated. It should not become the norm.
Il fenomeno dei bambini senza protezione è
The
allarmante.
phenomenon of children without rights
Le nazioni
cannot
devono
continue.
assumersi maggiori responsabilità.
Nations should assume the rights and the
Serve un
protection of
impegno
rights.
globale per la tutela dell'infanzia. La pace parte dai bambini e dalla loro tutela.
We need to protect the rights and the future of children.
Apostolica sui diritti dei bambini. E permettetemi solo una brevissima cosa. Si parlava di semplici parole, di parole che passano, di belle parole e qualcuno, molti di voi hanno esortato ai fatti. Questo è già un esempio, l'esortazione apostolica.
This apostolic exhortation is an example that we are already moving past this summit to a commitment to continuing to protect the rights of children. Thank you. And now the Pope is signing the document with the 8 points of protecting the rights for children that this summit had spoken so much about. In addition to the Pope, we also see Queen Rania Al Abdullah of Jordan also signing this document, this commitment to protecting children and their rights. A number of the participants are joining in signing this document, also including former U.S. Vice President Al Gore. And this shows the international scope of this summit. A number of NGOs and organizations dedicated to serving children and protecting their rights around the world also took place in this event throughout this day, including Mary's Meals, a charity founded in 2002 to serving and ending childhood hunger.
ci avete detto e abbiamo accolto, abbiamo visto che avete applaudito agli interventi. Quello è stato l'indice, direi, di una condivisione che insieme
The applause that
abbiamo
everyone has
fatto
given is an example, or is a testament to this
tragedia da una parte,
total
ma anche
commitment that we
grande
all have to
speranza
protecting the
dall'altra.
rights of
I
children.
bambini ci guardano. Grazie. Adesso con tutti i relatori andiamo nella sala Clementina.
Now, on behalf of Vatican Media, I would like to thank our in-studio audio technician, Adriano Vitali, and Father Felipe Herrera Espilat, our audio coordinator, and all our media partners, both TV and radio, and our friends at the DYCIA who have made this broadcast possible. And a special thank you to all of you joining us from around the world on any platform. Please visit the Vatican News web portal, Facebook, Instagram, and X for coverage of all other Vatican and news around the world. Laudetur Jesu Christus.
live in Delhi, but I work on
guardare storie laghi.
very good, isn't it? Does the exploitation matter?
Father in heaven, may the faith you have given us in your Son, Jesus Christ, our brother, and the flame of charity enkindled in our hearts by the Holy Spirit,